are physiologically not able to run a marathon, and we can't take the liability. Welcome to the Beckie Kullberg Show, where we're going to have real, raw, and honest talk about our bodies and their beauty. Can you believe that that is what Bobbi Gibb heard in 1966? This is a story that is going to blow your mind if you have never heard it. This is Women's Month, and I want to highlight women's stories that I think are really interesting. Depending on your age, 1966 might seem like 100 years ago, and I totally get it. I wasn't even born yet. I was born in 67, so I wasn't here yet, and I don't really know what was going on at the time. To put it into perspective, in 1966, the things that were popular were Star Trek, the Monkees, and Batman. The number one songs that year were from Tom Jones. The number one band that year was the Beach Boys, and number two was the Beatles, and number three was the Rolling Stones. So yeah, this was some time ago, and yet if you think about the big picture, that was 58 years ago. That is not that long ago, depending on your age and in our lifetime. So let's talk about Bobbi Gibb. Who is she? What did she do? And why did she make history? She was a trailblazer. And I think like a lot of women who are trailblazers, they don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm ready to be a trailblazer. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to stand out. That's not what happens as far as I can see. Because what it comes from, like you think about Rosa Parks or people that just did what they believed was right at the time. That's what Bobbi Gibb did. She knew she loved running. She loved running more than anything else. She said she felt she could be herself when she was running in the woods with her dog. Her parents weren't really supportive of her running. She just wanted to run. Her mom said, "You'll never meet a man out there in the woods." And her dad just put up his hands saying, "No, just don't run. No." So what's the story behind Bobbi Gibb? Well, obviously she was a runner. She loved to run. And in 1966, she applied to run in the Boston Marathon. She got a rejection letter. That rejection letter said, women are not physiologically able to run a marathon, and it would be a liability to them. She was devastated. She was devastated. Now, again, trailblazers don't go, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to be the one to make a difference. Maybe they do a little bit. She just knew she wanted to run, and she wanted to run a marathon. She'd been training, not necessarily for a marathon. She'd been running longer and longer and longer distances. Her boyfriend at the time, they would get on his motorcycle and they would drive out a mile and she'd run back. They would drive out 2 miles and she would run back. And so this grew and grew and grew. And she just realized, I love running and I love distance running. Seemed to not be a big deal for her. Now, 1966, there aren't women's running shoes and men's running shoes. There are only running shoes, and they're designed for men. There aren't women's sports clothes. There are only sports clothes, and those are designed for men. So she ran in men's running shoes, which, we as women, we can run in those shoes. It's just, is it the right size? And the clothes, they weren't designed for women. So she got this rejection letter, and she decided that she was going to do it. She said, I'm going to do this. I really want to do this. The drive that she had in her was so incredibly strong that nobody could talk her out of it. Have you ever been so driven for something that you're like, I'm going to do it. I don't care that people are saying no. I don't care that they won't allow women in here. I'm still going to do it. That drive that she had was so incredibly strong that she is a trailblazer. It's like so exciting thinking about what she did to get into the Boston Marathon. So this is what she did. She couldn't get in. She didn't qualify because, for the simple fact that she was a woman. She was a woman. So what she did is she wore men's sneakers. She borrowed her brother's like Bermuda shorts, and she had a big sweatshirt because she wanted to camouflage the fact that she was a woman. I read that she was wearing a bathing suit underneath. I don't know why. I've never read why she was wearing a bathing suit. I don't know if it's because it was more supportive. I'm not really sure, because back in 66, they did not have sports bras. I'm pretty sure I didn't do research on this. I'll be honest. I didn't do research on this. I don't even remember having sports bras when I was in high school in the 80s. I think sports bras are pretty new in the world of women's wear. So she wore a bathing suit underneath, and she hid in the bushes. She didn't stand there at the start line with all the men because she was afraid that they would see her and recognize that she was a woman, and she would get pulled. Even worse, she could get arrested. I mean, can you imagine being a woman and fearing that you could be arrested simply for the fact that you're a woman in a men's event? Okay. That right there is like, I can't even imagine it. So she's hiding in the bushes. She's hiding in their bushes in her sweatshirt and her brother's shorts and these running shoes. And she waits for the gun to go off. It's just so hard to imagine how excited she must have felt, how scared she must have been, and the exhilaration all at the same time. The gun goes off, and she waits for the mass of men to go by. And she runs out of the bushes and she sneaks in. Oh my gosh. And she starts running. And my guess is, what I've read about her, she was so physically prepared to run this marathon. She was beyond prepared. I don't think she even really struggled physically at all. It was more of a mental thing, like, am I going to get discovered? Are they going to see me? What's going to happen? She was so terrified of being discovered. Well, if you remember, I said that she was wearing a heavy sweatshirt. And running, even walking rapidly, you're going to get hot. You're going to heat up. And so she started getting really, really hot, uncomfortably hot, to where she's like, I can't run in this sweatshirt anymore. And she was afraid to take it off because all she had underneath was her bathing suit. So the courage that she had within her, she decided to take off the sweatshirt. And what happened next was so amazing, so amazing. She takes off her sweatshirt, and the men around her realized, this is a woman. We're running with a woman. In that moment, instead of calling her out, they ran around her. They got to where they were protecting her because they knew that she shouldn't be there. She wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't qualify to be there because she was a woman. And they ran with her to make sure that she could safely cross that finish line. And soon, the people watching all these people run by, pretty soon they realized, oh my gosh, there's a woman in the marathon. This is the first time they've ever seen this. Like, can you imagine what that felt like? One, your fears are diminished about getting caught because you've got all these men around you. Now, holy smokes, your attention goes beyond the people around you that are running the race. Now your attention goes outward to the spectators. And what do the spectators start doing? They start cheering. They start cheering for this woman, for this trailblazer who has secretly entered a race that no woman has ever done. Not only has never done, but has been forbidden to do because they're not physiologically equipped to run a marathon. The spectators on the side start cheering. Okay, before I go into a little bit more, I want to read from a newspaper article from the Olympics. And it's from theolympics.com to really kind of pull you into the mindset of Bobbi Gibb. It said it's going to set women free. So Bobbi had moved out to California and with her parents. And so she set her mind. So this is the part of the article from the Olympics. Set in her mind that she was going to run. Gibb began the journey from California back to Boston. She was raised in Massachusetts, I believe. Over the course of several bus rides, she reflected on the hurdles that awaited her, beginning first with her own parents. So her parents lived in Massachusetts. Bobbi had moved to California. She's making her way back to Massachusetts, and having decided this, she said, having decided not to tell them of her plans until she arrived in Massachusetts the day before the race, Gibb remembers their shock at her announcement. My dad slammed out of the house. Now let's hear no more about this marathon stuff. Dad was done. He was like, he couldn't even conceive it. Like, why would you even think about doing this? And her mother's there, and she says to her, Mom, you've got to drive me. I've trained for 2 years for this. Don't you see? It's going to set women free. So she went into this knowing the magnitude that it would set women free to be able to be in sports. And she goes on to saying, my mother had spent almost my entire adult life trying to get me to conform to the same deadening norms that had kept her so miserable. For my God, she said, you're not going to survive in this world if you keep acting like this. Acting like this means conform. Do what they say. Just go along with the masses. Just do it. Basically, just do it and shut up. Bobbi Gibb, that's her mom is saying that to her, come on, just conform. And then the article goes on to saying, after some insisting and a lot of persuading, Gibb finally managed to get her mother to agree to drive her to the start of the race. But after she arrived in Hopkinton, she quickly realized joining the marathon wouldn't be as easy as she first thought. Facing swelling fears of being arrested, officials throwing her out, and even the race runners turning against her, Gibb hid in a clump of bushes as near to the race start as she could find. Okay, now back to the crowd on the side, the spectators. The women were going crazy. And this is part from the article. The women were going crazy. They were jumping and screaming and jumping up and down. One woman, an older woman, with a bunch of kids around, she was going, Ave Marie, Ave Marie. I go by and there are tears running down her face. And I could feel tears on my own face. At the moment, this is again from the article, at the moment, we knew the world was never going to be the same. There's no going back. We aren't going back to the way things were. This is something new. This is going to change the way things are. Now, you might think that in 1966, after a woman sneaked into the Boston Marathon, that they would suddenly say, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. This is cool. She could do it. That means other women can too. So you might be wondering what happened to Bobbi when she hit the finish line. Because I was wondering, I'm like, were there police there? Because I'm from Sonoma County, Northern California, and there's a race in San Francisco called Beta Breakers. And a lot of people, it's San Francisco, okay, right? It's crazy. And a lot of people at the start line, the gun goes off, they take off their clothes and they run naked through the race. And they're afraid that they're going to get arrested along the way. So at the very end, it's possible that they get arrested. I did the race several times and I saw a lot of naked people, and running naked is not pretty. And, but I never saw anyone get arrested. So I was wondering, did Bobbi get arrested at the finish line? Because, I don't know that she broke the law. per se, yet she was doing something she wasn't supposed to do. And not only she wasn't supposed to do, she knew she was doing something she wasn't supposed to do. So she gets to the finish line. The governor of Massachusetts, I'm assuming was a man, I don't know, shook her hand, and the press swarmed in eager to snag this woman to get her story, who just made history. So she was greeted with enthusiasm. She was greeted with praise and recognition that she just made history. She just made history. Like, she's a trailblazer. And for every one of you who's done races, whether it's a Spartan race or a half marathon or a 5K or a 10K or anything, this is a trailblazer. I also read that up until this point, 1966, women were not allowed to participate in any race that was longer. Are you ready for this? That was longer than 1.5 miles. That was it. That was all that they believed that women could physically do. 1.5 miles. Okay, I can do that in my sleep. 1.5 miles. That was all that they believed that women could do. So she really, truly pushed the limits and the beliefs. Like, you know, some people, I'm this way too. I think this is kind of general human nature. You have to see it to believe it. Not everyone is that way. And so I don't think men necessarily were being mean, inconsiderate, or disrespectful. It was more that they didn't see it could be done. And so she proved that it can be done and more. And, you know, you've got to think about where in your life are you holding back because you haven't seen somebody else do it. Maybe you want to be a trailblazer and you're like, no one else has done it. Jamie Kern-Lima wrote a book called Worthy, and she has this poem called You're Not Crazy, You're Just First. And the first person to do something, there's no one else around who's doing it. So it's exciting that you don't have anyone to compare yourself to, but at the same time, you're paving the way for those people behind you. The movement. Now in 1966, a woman has completed the Boston Marathon. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's now let's move forward. Let's have women be able to enter it. No, it wasn't until 5 years later in 1971, 5 years later. It was in the autumn of 1971, Thoughts Became Action. The Amateur Athletics Union announced it was permitting its sanctioned marathon members to allow women to enter, meaning in the spring of 1972, the Boston Marathon had its first female official champion. Can you imagine being Bobbi? Now, she just completed a marathon in 1966. I do know that I read somewhere that she went on for Gibb, who ran the race unofficially. Okay. So I didn't find in my research, I didn't find how she was able to start, if she started at the start line or if she had to hide in the bushes again, but she ran the race again unofficially in 1967 and 1968. The shift indicated an important moment for women's equality, both in running and outside of it. Gibb says, I do think it was a pivotal event in changing the way people thought about women and in igniting the next wave of women's movement. This is, I think, a really profound kind of a statement. If a shapely blonde housewife can run a marathon, so can you, and so can anyone. At least for the first time, people started thinking, maybe I can run a marathon. And that was an important step for women on their path to autonomy. If you can run from A to B, you can do just about anything. I don't know about you. I am so inspired by this story because I'd like to think of myself in ways as a trailblazer. I've created some programs that nobody else has created, and created them from my own ideas, my own experiences, and I've sold those programs. And people have gone through those programs and had really amazing positive results. And I see women around me, and I see men too, of course, who are also trailblazers. Maybe you have an idea in your heart. Maybe you have a project or a program or a business that you want to start, and you're thinking, I'm scared. Totally normal. Totally. Do you think that Bobbi Gibb didn't feel scared when she was sitting in those bushes? Yeah. She was scared when she was running the race. Of course she was scared. It's okay to be scared. We can still do the thing and be scared. Scared is just our body's way of saying something is about to happen. Something is about to go on. It doesn't mean that it stops us. It doesn't mean that it says, okay, you can't move forward. No, it's there to protect us. You move forward anyways. You go through it. You feel the fear and do it anyways. It's a cliche and it works. It works. You just do it. You push through the fear. That movie, We Bought a Zoo. I love that movie with Matt Damon. If you've never seen it, his theory is all you need, I think it's 15 seconds of courage, and just do it. And he bought a zoo and 15 seconds of courage. If you're sitting there and you're like, okay, what do I do? All right, just put the clock down and just do it. Mel Robbins, 5-second rule. If you have something that you're ready to do, just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go and do it. Just do it. Do the thing. I know for me, when I've gotten in my head and I've gotten holed up by fear or what are people gonna think? What are people gonna think? Oh my gosh, that is such a big one that I know for me, I do allow it to paralyze me sometimes. And I had this revelation recently, and I'll share it with you. I was like, well, what will people think? And then I took it to the next level. Who are the people? And I realized it was just one person. There was one person that I was thinking, what are they going to think? And this person doesn't even play a role in my life right now. And I don't know why I've singled out this person. So then I started challenging it. And I actually had okay, let me back up. What will people think? Whatever you tell yourself is in your imagination. It's your imagination's having this conversation of what will people think? Well, oh gosh, they could think I'm stupid. They could think, why you? They could think I'm not smart enough. They could think all these things that you're thinking about are in your imagination. So if you're going to be in your imagination about what they're thinking, why not do it to your advantage? So I, in my imagination, brought that person up in front of me and I said, what do you think of me? And in my imagination, they said, I'm proud of you. I said, what do you think of me? And in my imagination, they said, I wish I could be more like you. I asked them again, what do you think of me? And they said, you're a trailblazer. Imagine that conversation, what that could do for you. Now, maybe you're thinking, I don't give a hoot about what other people think about me. That's great. Do you have a dream in your heart that's something is holding you back? What is it that's holding you back? What's your Boston Marathon? What is it that you really want to do? And you've got things that are in your way. You've got obstacles in your way. What can you do to just sneak in behind the bushes and enter the race? What is it for you? I hope you have felt as inspired by this story as I have. I hope to meet Bobbi Gibb. I read she's 80 years old and she's got to be just an extraordinary woman. Read up on her. Really, she's an inspiration to me, and I know to many. And what's so interesting is I've never heard this story before until recently in 2024, and this was my lifetime ago. So, all right, go out there, be a trailblazer, be the one who paves the way for other women behind you. Be that person. All right. See you next time. Peace out.